Representatives of more than 30 countries met in Saudi Arabia to discuss the future of peace in Ukraine and the world, just by the way. This is Henry Keane on UATV English, wrapping up the hard truth in easy terms. In our weekly episode, good afternoon. We very much hope that the outcome of these peace talks will be a peace summit at the end of this year. The Russian Aggression Federation did not participate in the summit this year for obvious reasons. The peace in Ukraine will be only possible according to the Ukrainian peace formula.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Сьогодні черговий активний день для наших міжнародних зусиль.
Dear Ukrainians, I wish you good health. Today is another active day for our international efforts. Our team is working in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, at the meeting of advisors to the leaders of the states on the peace formula. In total, 42 countries are represented there. Different continents, different political approaches to global affairs, but everyone is united by the priority of international law. And it is for this that Ukraine proposed the peace formula, because the international rule-based order violated by Russian aggression must be restored. It is very important that there, on the sidelines of the meeting in Jeddah, bilateral negotiations with partners take place. Thankful to our delegation for this work. Consolidation of the world is one of the most essential tasks. The greater the consolidation of the world for the sake of restoring a just peace is, the sooner an end will be put to the bombs and missiles with which Moscow wants to replace the norms of international law. Another Russian missile attack against our country was today. Kinzhal caliber missiles. Their target was Motor Sich and our Khmelnytsky region. Some of the missiles were shot down, thankful to our air defense warriors for this. But no matter how many such Russian attacks occur, they will still not give the enemy anything. Anyway, we will protect freedom for Ukraine, for all our people, and Russia won't be able to replace international law with terror, or crisis, or any intimidation. Literally every week, the world really adds strength to protect normal life. This week I thank Germany and Lithuania for new defense and security packages for us, for our soldiers. We expect new solutions next week, new packages. We also work for even more achievements and opportunities in our defense industry. The results are there, everyone can see them, and they are fair results, correct, which show the aggressor state what its aggression means. Show not on TV, but precisely in the place from which this war came to Ukraine, to the region, to the world. He who brings problems to others must feel what problems are. And I thank the Security Service of Ukraine, our Navy, and every warrior who restores justice and teaches Russia to losses. Ukraine will win this war. The world will win this war. Truth will win this war. The main thing is that all of us in Ukraine and everyone in the world who value a normal life work at 100% without any stop for the sake of victory. Our unity, our ability to build strength, and our ability to bring war back where it came from. It is the most tangible for Russia. And one more. Next week our work on cleaning public institutions from those who tried to drag from the past all those old habits, old schemes that weakened Ukraine for a very long time, for decades, will continue. There will be no more old formats in our country. Those formats when some defended the state and people, and others tried to put both the state and people at the service of their own benefit. No matter who this person is, whether he is a military commissar, whether he is a deputy, or whether he is an official, everyone must work only for the sake of the state, so be it. I thank everyone who fights for Ukraine in all areas: Kupiansk, Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Mariinka, Shakhtar, Zaporizhia. I thank everyone who moves forward, who leads forward, and only forward. Glory to Ukraine.
In November 2022, during the G20 summit in Indonesia, President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, presented peace formula. It aims to resolve two key and quite tricky issues to ensure a comprehensive, just, and sustainable peace in Ukraine and to guarantee security for the world. What me and President Zelensky mean by just peace. No halts or pauses in this war that gives Russian invaders a time and space for manipulation. No concessions of any sort, territory or otherwise. Get the hell out of our lands. Stop murdering and rapes and harbour shellings and dam explosions and food blackmailing, and stop saying all that has been done by us Ukrainians, killing our own brothers and sisters, bombing our own cities and abducting our own children and sending them to Russia for some insane, Kremlinesque, perverted logics. I mean, everyone knows the Kremlin lies in industrial scale, but the very idea that we are tearing our own country, lives and future apart is way too ridiculous, even for such an outdated Soviet autocratic monstrosity as Vladimir Putin is, who says the war in Ukraine was necessary because of NATO, UFO, Gufu, Tufu, Whoopie, Droopy, and the Kremlin version of Jesus Christ himself that has secretly told Putin killings are necessary to achieve peace. Well, Comrade Putin, no way in Ukraine other than Ukrainian way. Get out and live in your Soviet Russia the hell the way you want. Keep buying everything, and I mean everything, from house appliances to cars from the West for the money that a pack of Russian oil vampires, oligarchs, are sucking out of Russian motherland's body. Get out or we will make you too. And that is the only peace for Ukraine paradigm available for Russia. But let me remind you now how fundamental topics of the peace formula look like for the rest of the world. There are 10 of them: radiation and nuclear safety, food safety, energy security, release of prisoners and deported persons, implementation of the UN Charter and restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity and the world order, withdrawal of Russian troops and cessation of hostilities, restoration of justice, ecological safety, preventing escalation of war and repetition of aggression, confirmation of the end of the war. The entire diplomatic team is actively working to engage the widest possible range of states in the implementation of the peace formula. Russia is not invited to participate in this dialogue. I know many international organizations who might say that this is not wise and looks like sort of a discrimination. Well, of course it is a sort of a discrimination, dear world, a discrimination in return sort, in return to what Russia did and does in Ukraine right now. And may I suggest a personal attitude to understand Ukrainian point of view better. Politicians saying that Russia should be involved into dialogue must come over to Ukraine, together with their families. I mean, come to Bucha, visit Odessa, live in Kiev for a couple of weeks, spend some time in Black Sea on a vessel full of grain that is blocked by Russians, and then come back and try to maintain a normal dialogue with an international aggressor and a thug and a murderer, Russia. We in Ukraine are literally dying to see how low that will go. Anyhow, don't worry, we suggest another way. Ukraine proposes that each of the 10 points of the peace formula to be coordinated by one or more leading countries. Other countries are more than welcome to actively participate in the implementation of any part of the formula as participants. Joining one or more points of the Ukrainian peace formula does not oblige you to join all the points as a whole. Currently, more than 50 countries from Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa and Asia have joined the regular discussions on points of the Ukrainian peace plan that should be taken as the basis for the restoration of a comprehensive, just and sustainable peace in Ukraine, simply because this war of Russian aggression is being fought on Ukrainian territory. We want to know what the world thinks. We seek to attract the maximum number of opinions from our partners. At the same time, please remember, proposals must be based on the UN Charter and respect its principles. We are ready to consider all initiatives that are based on respecting the territorial integrity of Ukraine and in no way lead to freezing of the conflict. Stopping the war instead of ending it, it is the same as choosing appeasement instead of peace. Like, hey, give that mad dog a bone and enjoy peace for some time. Well, no. Ukraine suggests shooting the ill animal and then internationally discussing the recipe of vaccine against rabies so as to prevent these catastrophes from happening in the future. President Zelensky's strategy for implementing the peace formula has 3 phases. The first one includes meetings with ambassadors accredited in Ukraine for a detailed discussion of each point of the formula. The second phase consists of meetings of national security and political advisors and representatives of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs in order to optimize the forms and mechanisms for the future implementation of the Ukrainian peace plan onto reality, and we are moving forward with it. The first such meeting took place in Denmark in June, the next one as I mentioned, is planned in Saudi Arabia in August. And the third stage should be the holding of the Global Peace Summit at the level of state leaders by the end of 2023. Ukraine calls on countries that respect international law and the UN Charter to join the Ukrainian peace formula and define the points on which they are ready to work. This will be a really contribution to not only the ending the war, the scale of which has not been known in Europe since the Second World War, but also an investment in the future security of all countries of the world. I mean, let us bring this hard truth in easy terms already. We all know what Putin's Russia really is. Even Russia knows what Putin's Russia is. Decline, war, death, crisis, and all that back to USSR thing, and we also know that Putin's Russia will never ever change, and this is why. Let us make Russia a favor and take that collective effort to make the whole world's security architecture impregnable for our own collective planetary good. Russia has been provoking NATO for a whole week and will continue to do so if not stopped. On Tuesday, during a fake show, sorry for that military exercise in Belarus, two Belarussian helicopters moving in low altitude for a short time crossed the air border of Poland in the Belarusian area. There's no mistake and no accident, but a deliberate attempt to provoke NATO to see if and how it will react. Shortly, of course, beloved Putin's way trick comes. It wasn't Russia. The Lukashenko and Putin regimes are obviously testing the will and restraint of NATO commanders. In the future, we should expect an increase in number and scale of provocations and the border that is beyond any doubt. The behavior of Moscow and Minsk testifies of the intentions to level up to scale the aggression against Ukraine to the point of war against the West. And as usual for Putin's Russia, open military aggression is preceded by a hybrid stage. PVC Wagner on the territory of Belarus is assigned the role of hybrid troops, for which allegedly do not bear responsibility either Lukashenko nor Putin. Ukraine's experience should give NATO a clear action plan. Those Soviets are demanding an answer? Well, don't be shy. Provide them with one. The answer is powerful, so that to destroy all their Soviet hopes for impunity. Currently, however, there are no threats of new large-scale invasion from territory of Belarus to Ukraine, as our intelligence informs. The number of Russian mercenaries, I mean those notorious Wagnerites, in Belarus is about 5,000, and they do not have any heavy weaponry or equipment. However, PVC Wagner in Belarus is a thing in itself. It is a tool of hybrid war, a constant theme to exploit, to maintain a sort of a pressure, if not a threat, then a provocation to make it look like one. The Kremlin and Minsk dictatorships can and will no doubt deny their respective responsibilities for their possible provocations. One of the possible targets of elderly Soviet dictators is the Suwalki Gap, a narrow strip of the border of NATO members Poland and Lithuania. The borders of Ukraine and NATO countries with Belarus are very reliably covered and equipped. Possible adventures of Russian mercenaries there are, to put it mildly, unpromising. In easy terms, just as cancer poses a threat only to its carrier, the Wagnerites pose the greatest threat only to one country, to Belarus itself. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda met the Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki on August 3rd. Politicians discussed in particular possible provocations from Belarus and Russia. The Lithuanian head of state announced this on Twitter. Nausėda called productive the meeting with Morawiecki, which took place near the Suwalk corridor, a region that connects the territory of Baltic states with Poland and the rest of NATO, and also separates the Kaliningrad region of the Russian Federation and the territory of Belarus. The presence of Wagner PMC mercenaries in Belarus is an additional security risk factor for Lithuania, Poland and NATO allies. We remain vigilant and ready for any possible development, he said. A day before, however, on Wednesday, August 2nd, during an attack on Izmail city, Russian drones violated the Romanian airspace border. Residents say that one of the drones fell in the forest. This was reported by DG24 media with reference to Tudor Ceniega, the mayor of the Chatolki commune in Telche. He noted that local residents confirmed that the drones flew in a straight line over the houses. People were very afraid. The downed drone was not found. They searched but found nothing. You don't even have a road in such a thicket, Ceniega remarked. When there were rumors that a drone fled into Romanian air, it caused a panic with local people because the accuracy of these drones is not high, to say the least. Well, dear Romania, what can we say? We're very, very sorry you had to go through this. It was a terrible moment. We know because 1,961 drone has been launched at Ukraine during the war, and the war is still raging on. And if you wish it over as soon as possible, for the sake of all of us, help us to drive the aggressor away. Otherwise, Russian drones and more are guaranteed. You know, don't get me wrong, I'm nobody to give advices to high generals and NATO commanders, but sometimes, when a game is played with a Sharpie, maybe there is a reason and time to change the rules. If Putin and Lukashenko say it isn't us, it is somebody else's Wagnerites and helicopters, okay then. Boom! That just was somebody else's HIMARS. Well, let me wrap up some figures for you today. Since Russia killed the Black Sea Grain Initiative, Russian missiles and drones has also burned 180,000 of tons of grain, 26 port infrastructure objects, and 5 civilian vessels in just 9 days. The purpose of the Russian attacks is obvious: to block the export of Ukrainian grain, to take revenge on Ukraine and the world for successfully repelling the aggression. It is hard for the terrorist Putin to accept the reality. With no chance to win on battlefield, he kills deals. Civilian vessels and civilians, burns grain and sets silos on fire. Then he says, of course, that Russia seeks nothing but peace, while the only thing it is seeking for is to oust Ukraine from world grain markets to take its place and establish a monopoly. This is a Russian version of Hunger Games, with countries critically dependent on Ukrainian food to blackmail them into taking the Kremlin side. The hard truth in easy terms is, by causing humanitarian disasters, famine and malnutrition this time, the Kremlin expects to provoke another influx of refugees to Europe. This, as Kremlin hopes, should undermine the EU potential to help Ukraine and Ukrainians by forcing Ukraine to look for alternative ways of selling agricultural products. Russia seeks no peace, of course, but provokes conflicts between Kiev and allies who protect their own agricultural sector from crisis. Well, from Russia without any love these days, right? By attacking Ukrainian ports, in particular on the Danube, Russia poses a direct threat to NATO countries and their navigation in the Black Sea. Well, I might say I have an answer to that, but let me pass the chance to answer Russian sadistic, ill terror downing civilian planes, vehicles, tens of thousands of killing, rapes and arsons, genocide, ecocide in Ukraine, and foodicide for the world. Let me pass my right to answer to all of that to someone who knows the best way talking to Russians. Now, I will be quoting the office of the President of Ukraine. Russian aggression in the Black Sea will receive a proper, even symmetrical, response from the armed forces of Ukraine. End of quote. And amen to that. Time for more on UATV. You ask, we answer. We have a massive 5-storied question from @WBin. He or she is probably quoting Google, where he or she read that in 1992-94 former Soviet state assets were distributed amongst the people, and approximately 100 oligarchs had in some way collected them all. Wow, I'll do my best to explain to him or her in easy terms the truth and creation of an oligarchy system in Russia as such, and in some cases in Ukraine just as well. Firstly, the companies passing to private sector initiated by President Yeltsin in 1992-1994, owned by which state? RSFSR, the predecessor of USSR, or the USSR itself? Whose assets were distributed amongst the ex-Soviet states in reality? After the collapse of the USSR, all the former Soviet industrial and any other companies became the property of the countries where they were physically located. This applied to money too. For example, Soviet bank deposits. Russia has kept the so-called special status of Sevastopol in Crimea for itself since the Soviet fleet was really large and the Black Sea ports simply could not accept all the ships. So Russian ships were based on the territory of Ukraine and in 2014 took an active part in the annexation of Crimea. And yes, Russia kept all the bank savings of Soviet Sberbank of USSR for itself. Therefore, our parents and grandmothers and grandfathers lost all the savings. I mean, all of it. Just imagine 50 years of work and then nothing. No money, no country, no future. Remember that thing, we'll get back to it in just a moment. According to various calculations, Ukrainians lost that time $3.5 billion in savings. Although if we are to index that to today's rate, it is about $10 billion. Point 2. The so-called privatization of our shares that allowed you to purchase ex-Soviet property of any kind were they really given to people? To all of the 290 million of people of USSR? Really? No. Privatization of state-owned enterprises took place according to the following scheme. A joint stock company was formed first and all employees were given a certain part of shares. People did not understand the value of shares and sold them easy and foolishly. And it was all staged properly and all the shares were bought out by proper people, yes, future Russian oligarchs. Why would people sell their shares, you can ask me? Well, that would only mean that you are not from USSR. Soviet people were always squeezed between bad past and terrible future. And the choice between bad and the worst was the only one available for a Homo Sovieticus. All of them recently had lost all of their life savings, remember? Point 3. Privatization of shares were given. Nope. Very often when a person came to the cash register, they were asked what he wants or she wants more to use his share in a newly born joint stock company and to be promoted within a structure or plus 10 rubles to his salary. Since most people did not know any damn thing about joint stock companies or anything about financial markets, they just choose plus 10 rubles to the salary. Obvious Soviet choice. Worst. Point 4. And of course, there wasn't no audit at all. All was staged, and so that later it would not be possible for the people to protest against the whole criminal thing. The new oligarchs made the sales of the VU shares and shares irrevocable. Only think about it. They made the unlawful thing the law. Wow. And number 5. Oligarchs got it all. For the most part, a certain oligarch received all the shares of one certain ex-Soviet enterprise. If one oligarch couldn't afford to buy it all, coercion was used. Mostly criminal one, with lots of Hollywood thing, blood and bodies and shootings. Or a fictitious company was created and that fictitious entity had a right for collecting all of the huge debts of the ex-Soviet enterprise. All of a sudden, another click and the enterprise was sold to, that is right, oligarchs again, of course. So you see, this way or the other, there was no way for Russian Homo Sovieticus to get rich unless he kills and cheats. That kind of rings the Kremlin bell, right? It was Henry Keane on UATV State Channel, wrapping up hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world, directly from Ukraine. Ask us a question, we'll do our best to answer it in our comments below. Like, comment and subscribe. Your opinion matters the most to us. That is all, folks. See you soon next week. Stay safe and tune for more.